Today we have some big news for SMITE. Horus had their usual dev update, but they threw in a lot of extra information. And that included the current design for two new gods, being Horus and Set. They did that at the end of the dev update, but I know a lot of you are going to click on this video because of this very topic. So we're going to start with Horus and Set, and then we'll talk about all the other changes, the balance changes that are discussed for the upcoming patch and all that kind of stuff. So there's more information afterwards, but let's start with the biggest deal here. The first one of the two gods that was shown was Horus, and this is what he looks like. Horus was talking about how they want him to look different enough from Ra, so he has his own identity, and I think they've succeeded in that. He doesn't look very much like Ra, even though he's still a bird technically. They also revealed that he's going to be a warrior, and he's going to be the god of the sky, as it is in his lore as well. And along with that comes a certain mindset as to how he's supposed to be. And in Horus' idea, that is basically a support-oriented warrior. So he's more like a guardian in terms of what he does, but he is still a warrior, still a physical damage dealer as such. I think that's kind of reflected in his design as well, with that relatively heavy armor across his entire body. And yeah, these guardian wings, I guess, the shielded wings that might play a role in deflecting attacks or similar as well. And he will also have some mobility, which will specifically be through his wings. The other god that we have is Set, and it was kind of known that both of them will be released together, kind of being opponents in lore already. They're kind of designed in a way where they're supposed to be similar but different. And if you look at them side by side, you can kind of see that they have these similar color accents across both their armor, for example, but at the same time, one is very bright, light style, and the other one is very dark. For Set, we know that he was supposed to be set apart in a way from Anubis, no pun intended here, and therefore he's wearing this face mask. So apparently it's supposed to be a donkey mask, I don't know where that's coming from, but anyways, this is why he has this kind of heavily armored style as well, and has these, I guess, blades or protectors on his arms and all that kind of stuff that just makes him a little bit more dark and assassin-like. And he will be an assassin. So he, lore-wise, will be someone who is like leaning towards the dark side, towards chaos, and more of a rogue-style character. So basically what we found out with the earlier leaks about them beforehand holds very much true, and now we can see that in the visual style as well. What we can also see is that they have similar weapons, and apparently this will be noticeable when they fight each other. You will kind of see that they have a similar weapon fighting style with that, which will be interesting to see considering one is a warrior and the other one is an assassin. I'm especially curious how Set's basic attacks are going to work, if he's going to be a more ability or AA focused character, because if he's AA focused with a weapon like that, his basic attack swings could look pretty interesting. Apparently, due to the nature of their lore, both Set and Horus will have references to each other somehow, but will also be opposites at the same time. But again, that isn't all the information that we have in this dev update. We also have new items, or item changes rather. We have map changes and all sorts of things in terms of balance as well. Let's start with the quick fixes that were announced. The party issue that many players had for a long time should be fixed as of today. You should be able to invite everyone again. The same goes for the Steam issue that was related to that. And you should also be able to do friend requests for people who are offline, and commendations are working now. There are some issues that are still being worked on, namely the empty friend list that many players have, console leaderboards not working, and the item builder on console not working properly and not saving things properly. But now for the bigger changes. In the balance progress report for this patch, which is kind of like the update between the patch notes basically, Ajax specifically said that duo lane will receive changes in the near future. Horus is not happy with the state of duo lane as is, it's still too far behind, and especially the mid laner and jungler are apparently still too far ahead, despite the solo lane already getting a bit more of a lead in one way or another, and the jungler already getting multiple nerfs. So in the next patch, there is supposed to be a change that will bring up duo. It sounded like this is related to XP and gold. Titan or Horus wasn't willing to specify that further just yet, but saying that we will receive this change in the next update. Also, there will be a change to invades. At the moment, invades are very rewarding according to Horus, as you on one hand get the full reward for a camp, but also take away the full reward from the enemy team. Especially in early game, this can lead to a lot of snowballing. What Horus wants to do in the next patch is lower the XP and gold you get for invading camps on the opposite side of the map in early game specifically. Because that way you would only take away the XP and gold and still get a reward for it, but just not quite the full reward. So you have to decide more between taking your own camp or taking the enemy camp and sacrificing a little bit of XP and gold. They say that this change is actually still gonna make invading very rewarding, as it will still give your team a lead in many ways, and I can see that. But at the same time, as a jungler, you have to be willing to sacrifice here. So I don't know how much that counts for them, as they will, at the end of the day, will always try to keep up an XP somehow, and that could put them behind. It's more something for solo and duo, I think, if your team is ahead and pushing into the enemy buff especially. We'll also see some item changes. Specifically, the bridge items for hunters are being targeted. And this is very interesting because that means the whole DPS build that we have just now might actually be outdated with the next patch. We'll have to see about that. So what Horus concluded was that Ichaival and Asi specifically are usually not rewarding enough in most builds. They're typically not built because it's just not worth trading in a 1700 gold item when you're gonna trade out later anyways. And yeah, even though Asi is sometimes built in late game, they don't really have the niche that Horus wants them to have. Instead, they will become tier 3 items with a tier 2 item in between, so they are useful in late game. And this is very, very interesting because, again, Asi is already useful in late game, and Ichaival has for the longest time been a very, very strong item that only recently fell off in popularity, and only some other items can kind of hold their own against it as a single item as well. So with these things becoming late game items, we might be in for a whole new hunter meta, because especially Asi, but also Ichaival, could easily become the best option for lifesteal or for DPS, depending on how they're balanced. And we're still not done with changes, because we're also getting god changes. So the first one that was talked about here was Merlin. Merlin is going to get some nerfs, however, he is statistically not overwhelming in terms of his performance, though I personally will say, this is not on the patch notes, I think Merlin's impression of being overwhelming is to a decent amount from Arena. Merlin is absolutely bonkers in Arena and destroys even Zeus in my opinion, whereas in other modes he is a lot easier to control and has a bit more ramp up before he has his potential as well. I think that is maybe a big factor for this entire impression. In terms of his performance, Merlin is basically middle of the pack, and Ajax credits that to his high skill cap. He is not in the top 10 gods in the game right now, and the perception was expected to be very strong for him because, again, if you play him very well due to his high skill cap, then he will be very scary, basically like old Olaf for example, but he will still get some nerfs of some degree. Other gods that will receive nerfs are Pele, Bacchus, Kuang and Bakasura. Now Bacchus doesn't surprise me, the rest honestly does. We'll talk about Pele a little bit more later. I'm not sure where, especially the Kuang nerf comes from, and Bakasura I guess is still pop stomping too much or something. Whatever. I'm gonna be disappointed next patch, we'll see. There will also be buffs to other gods, but those have not been announced yet. And now we also have the balance report, as usual, from Horus, where they talk about how gods are performing after their buffs or nerfs and how that met the expectations of the community, etc. This is for Platinum Plus in Conquest only, unless otherwise specified. We'll have some arena cases here. The first one is Arachne. Arachne got an AoE web on her old landing. The perception of people was that they were interested in this change, but skeptical about it. Her win percentage went up from the 3rd highest wins to the 2nd highest win. Horus had a lot of explanation as to why that is the case and blah 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 yada yada. I'll cut this short. Basically, they think that it's a huge jump from the 3rd to the 2nd because that's the top end of characters in terms of performance, and that is something to look at in this context. So there wasn't much of a climb possible, so it still indicates that she got better. At the same time, I will say that all of the gods in the top 5 in patch 6.1 and Platinum Plus have a pick rate under 10% except Arachne with 12%. So maybe she's got a bit of a better indication than the rest of them. But then again, the highest picked banned gods are 90-ish%. So statistically, we have a much more solid foundation of how good they really are versus a select group of players playing them. Her popularity overall went up from place 50 to 23, so that goes in line with that percentage. She is more popular now. Still, in the end, she's probably the most questionable one out of the bunch here. The next one is Bacchus, who got his jug on level 1 instead of whenever he levels it and didn't have to invest a point into it. The perception about that was that basically everyone thought this was a good change. His win rate went up from place 66 to place 23, so quite a huge jump, and his popularity went up from place 58 to place 6, an even bigger jump here. Horus still considers the change to Bacchus a good change because he is now usable in Conquest, and I absolutely agree with that. It's the first time that Bacchus has a niche in Conquest, but at the same time, some other numbers will probably need some nerfs. Ajax specifically said probably 1 damage number and 1 number regarding his tankiness. That, I think, is very interesting because it actually means Bacchus is going to get more balanced for other modes where he was more of a problem through this buff that allowed him to be viable and pickable in Conquest. So Joust Bacchus, Arena Bacchus will be a little bit weaker, and I think most, at least Joust players, will be pretty happy with that. So I think this buff and what it will lead to couldn't have gone much better, really. The next one is Hera. Her ultimate got a cooldown increase, so she got a nerf. The perception was that Argus was the problem and not Hera, and therefore this nerf was very positively received. Her win rate went down from 61 to 89. Ajax also said that is because Hera is considered very hard to play, and therefore the win rate doesn't have to be that high with her as well. And her popularity went down from spot 19 to spot 69. However, this also comes with Merlin being released in the same patch, so everyone that was playing Hera before as a news mage might now be playing Merlin. Her ban rate remains high, we'll see how long that's still the case, but overall I would say that was a pretty good decision in terms of how this nerf was put on a character to focus on the main issue. King Arthur is a very interesting case. King Arthur only got some bug fixes that were pretty decent at the end, and a range fix to his ultimate as well actually, and an energy gain buff as well. So some minor tweaks really, not anything major. The perception with King Arthur is that he has a super high win rate, and actually the opposite is true. Ajax said that skill shottiness matters a lot. Yes, this is word for word. So how much a character relies on skill shots and how they feel is actually very, very important, and sometimes changes to that have more impact than small damage changes, as we could for example see with King Arthur's uncharged ultimate or low charged ultimate. And for unique gods, it's especially true, they mirror that philosophy that we can see there, that their kit working properly and functioning properly has a lot of impact. When King Arthur came out, he was actually the weakest god in the game. His win rate was literally 99 out of then 99 gods. Now in 6.1 he is at spot 94. Ajax says he's harder to learn, and therefore they only wanted to put minor buffs to him at the start just to see if people learn to play him better and pick him up more and then improve. His popularity, however, is still insanely high, and it started with being the most popular god in the game when he came out to now being in spot 2. And I think that is, by the way, something that Horus didn't really mention, a factor that could be very crucial here as well. With so many people playing King Arthur, there are bound to be many players that play him for the first time, many players that don't really learn the god much and just play him a few times, all that kind of stuff that factors in and lowers his win rate basically through people that have no clue about the god yet, as opposed to a god that has been played for a very long time, where everyone knows what to do, and that's also easier to play maybe. People still think that King Arthur is really good right now, and Horus kind of stated that people that play him really well can also perform very well. It's just that it's not the common case with King Arthur, because most people simply can't play him that well yet and don't know how to do it properly, and therefore don't do that well. In that context, if you're struggling a lot with King Arthur, I have a bunch of different guides for King Arthur specifically. Just search King Arthur DukeSloth on YouTube. You will find anything you need, because I know this god isn't that easy to pick up, but once you have a basic feel for him, he's a lot easier, and since his tweaks, he's even more fluid to play and better to play, so try him out again if you were struggling with him before. The next one is Loki. Loki had a nerf to his Vanish. This was specifically regarding the damage mitigation and to his basic attack chain, and his win rate went down from 30 to spot 78. However, 30 was his highest win rate ever before that. Now he's in a similar spot to, for example, Daji and Nemesis, but still better than gods like Thoth, Janus or King Arthur. His popularity went down from 23 to 58, so he's still played quite a lot. He's not completely out of the picture. In Arena, however, things are a bit different. His win rate dropped from 27 to 83. Maybe because there are a lot more super casual players in Arena that just pick Loki all the time and couldn't really handle those changes, whereas in Conquest, people are a bit more competitive when it comes to how much they want to learn a god. That's just my speculation here, but who knows. On the other hand, his popularity in Arena only went down from spot 2 to spot 6, so he is still very, very popular overall. And with a high popularity, again, I think often also comes a relatively low win rate. Ajax considers the nerf a success because it was the right thing to do. He is still viable, but Loki players have to go the extra mile to actually do the job with the character, so they don't really get things handed to them in the same way. If you agree or disagree with that, it's up to you. That's just how he explained it here. This is not my stance, I just want to say that. I'm staying out of this entire discussion. Keep that between the guys of you that love Loki and hate Loki. Then we have Pele as well. Pele got a nerf to her passive regarding the power and the lifesteal. The perception of many players was that it wasn't enough. Her win rate went down from spot 14 to spot 25, and her popularity went down from spot 18 to spot 20, but still with a very high ban rate. Ajax called this not the most successful nerf from the balanced team because she is still doing very well overall with a high popularity, and she's a bit too pop swampy. I personally don't have a problem with spot 25, but hey, I don't know. I guess I just like Pele a bit too much. So apparently that's why Pele will receive a further nerf next patch. Zeus got a bit of an overhaul. Aegis Assault got nerfed and Detonate the ult got some damage shifts. The perception was weird because people didn't really know if it was a buff or a nerf. His win rate went down from spot 47 to 52. The nerf here was not specifically targeted at Conquest though, but more at other modes, so these stats are not quite as relevant, though Zeus was still very popular at Worlds, and his popularity in Conquest went down from spot 66 to spot 69. This doesn't quite make sense because he shares the spot with Hera apparently, unless they have the exact same popularity right now. Maybe some of the numbers here got mixed up, but I guess either of them is around that area. In Arena, however, one of his stats went down from 5 to 11. I'm not sure it was the win rate or the popularity. Ajax will post a link with all the stats soon if you want to find out exactly, but something went down in Arena. I couldn't quite catch it on the patch notes. Zeus also apparently needs to invest a little bit more into damage and not rely quite as much on his base damage. The change was considered a small success, but not quite where they wanted to get to with Zeus, so I guess we might see some changes later down the road. I will talk more about Zeus at a later point as well in another video. Also, there is still the Twitch Prime bundle with King Arthur. If you want to check that out, if you have Twitch Prime, you can get that for free. There's a triple Worshipper event next weekend, and the Spring Holiday chest with the new Chang'e and Skadi skin will be available next week. Esports is starting up next Monday, but I think it's SML and SCL first, if I got it right, and SPL is starting at the end of March. However, there will be crossplay for SMITE Esports. Mid-season and Worlds will allow SMITE console teams, SCL teams, to play against SML teams and against SPL teams. Not all of them, but they have a chance to basically make their way into Worlds if they can beat the PC players. Then there was also an entire skin section. If you want to see more about that, I already made a video about that a while ago because all of the skins were leaked early. This is Master Soul by Merlin, Royal Fury Arthur, Shellsock Agni, Phoenix Fire Jingwei, Ragnarok Hera, and Raven Warlock Odin. All of these skins are coming out. The other ones we'll find out whenever they actually get released. Also, a new trailer was shown for SMITE. We'll talk about that in another video as well. And that was it. After that, the only thing that we had left were the Horus and the Set spoilers. If everything goes according to schedule, the next update will follow in 2 weeks, and then we will have all those changes in hand, and we'll see what else we get at that point. I hope this was interesting and insightful and gave you a good overview of this relatively long patch notes kind of video. I just figured I'd summarize it because my internet here was too bad to do it another way. If you're new to the channel, feel free to click the sub button and the bell, it really helps me out. And other than that, see you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth,